It is great to be with you. And I wasn't even planning on bringing him on so quickly, but I'm so eager to have him on. I've got Craig Lemasters right on screen with me simultaneously. You're going to be excited that I brought him on, however quickly I've done it. Craig is highly recommended from a good buddy of mine, Chester Elton, who we're going to have on in a few weeks down the road. But Craig and I met each other, I think, at least through being selected as global gurus in our respective fields. He is a leadership guru like no other. He's also a personal growth and development expert, particularly as it relates to moving your life in the direction of your goals, meaningful goals. So enough of me talking about you, since you're having to stand there quietly. Welcome aboard.
Oh, thanks, Joseph. What a pleasure to get to be with you today. And let me I'll start with one comment, which when I looked at your stuff originally back when, that in your mission statement around serving those committed to serving well, and I'm like, this is a guy that I want to spend time with. So I love the work you're doing.
That's perfect for me to be talking to you. Then I'm living my mission, is what you're pointing out. Because bottom line, your whole thing is to move people. Oh, by the way, I said this, and you haven't even been around, but let me just put this overlay on. I think this may be the best book cover on the planet. Okay, I hate you for this book cover. It is, there are very few book covers that connote movement and energy, and this one just nailed it. We're going to talk a lot about this book today. We're going to talk about getting unstuck in your personal life and your professional life. But let me just tee this up by saying, Craig's got credibility, particularly when it comes to the issue of having led from a CEO seat and then figuring out how to help the rest of us get unstuck no matter where we are in our life. So with that, help me just hear a little bit about your journey and where, if at all, you've ever been stuck.
Yeah, lots of places. I'll go ahead and give you that clue, Joseph. But yeah, so my journey professionally is actually pretty simple in that I spent 27 years with the same organization, which, especially when we were doing live talks and stuff, seems odd to people because today 27 years seems like a whole long time. But I grew up in an amazing company, and for whatever reason, got picked to be CEO. And as you mentioned, Joseph, I got to serve as a CEO for 11 years, or being a part of a public company, we would call that 44 quarters to be exact. And I describe it very simply as, and I mean this, that I had the best big company job anybody can have. Had an incredibly supportive board, got to do stuff I was passionate about, a lot of global expansion, a lot of digital stuff. So it was a great big company job. And that was the bulk of my work life. And then did a bit of an odd thing, left the organization 4 years ago when I turned 55, and really for the purpose of doing what I get to do now. I felt incredibly fortunate to run into some people that had amazing wisdom and shared with me some ideas that we were able to percolate into this concept of how do we get unstuck when we're stuck on hard stuff. And I thought that'd be kind of fun if we could build a business around this and help other leaders. And so that became my passion. And to wrap it up, I would say I get to now have a smaller firm, and I got to run a big company, and now I get to run a small company. So I've had the best big company job and now the best little company job. So
all right. So Craig, with that kind of speaks to the current model, right? And we'll get into what wisdom is. And by the way, we're playing big in Kansas.
All right.
Phil Young sends his comments right off the bat to you from Kansas.
All right.
So let's kind of start with the core model that you have, which, if I go on your site, it looks like this, right? There's a whole part of your life that's about giving practical takeaways and speaking. There's this book element of your career, and then there's this coaching piece. So I'll let you speak to just how you go from a CEO position to a business that targets kind of three legs of a stool, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually it's super simple, Jeff, because the glue for all of those, and we do a lot of advisory board work, is our other delivery mechanism. But the glue is this thing we call wisdom-based learning. And so what we've taught in the book, what I speak about, our coaching platform, our advisory board, it all works off of this chassis of this wisdom-based learning idea. So that's really the glue for all of it.
All right, let's get to wisdom-based learning. Let's not tease this to the end. You know, then we get like 5 drips of wisdom-based learning. Right off the bat, we got to do a formula. This is gonna, you know, like I love formulas so much. You know, as long as I don't have any math calculations. There is a multiplication sign in here, so I might be a little out of my element. But fire away. W equals K times E.
There it is.
That's all you need to know. We're done.
We're done. We can just sign off, but
right.
You don't need to buy the book now. But so everything we do is based on this idea of wisdom. Now, as you know, there's lots of definitions of wisdom. I don't think there's any bad ones necessarily, but the one I like the most that we use is this idea that, for me, wisdom that matters in an organizational context is really this unique intersection of both knowledge and experience. And the key is it can't be one or the other, which tends to be what happens as we're trying to solve really hard problems, is we're focused on one of them. So what I found was that if we put the right wisdom in the room, and these are people, by the way, this is not a machine, these are people, but the right wisdom in the room trying to solve a stuck topic, if you will, something we're stuck on, is quite remarkable. If it's facilitated, if those conversations are facilitated in the right way, the speed at which we get unstuck, I believe, there's no parallel to it. And that's what got me excited about it as an operator. So this is what I use to get unstuck. And quite candidly, Joseph, I didn't know if this formula was just something that resonated with me or if it would work elsewhere. That was part of why we did GXG. And so the first 2 years, we tried it in, I think, 12 industries and probably over 100 stuck topics, things leaders were just stuck on, and it worked. It works across the board because, again, it's not me or my folks solving these, it's facilitating the solution through these incredibly wise people. But that's the definition that I use, and it's really the glue, again, that holds all this together.
So I'm putting on my glasses because I'm going to read something out of your book.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm getting old. Those are the 2 reasons I put on my glasses. And but you know, as I listen to you, I think there is a mystery around wisdom. Like there's a Van Morrison song I love. It's called "No Guru, No Method, No Teacher, Just You and I in the Garden." Right? Like, I mean, at some level, we are looking for the Sherpa, the wisdom, the person with the flowing beard on the mountaintop, right? And when we wait for them to come, the time has passed for the need, and they're probably too old to really make it work. I mean, there's something very organically demystified about your theory of wisdom. You want to kind of take a shot at the demystification piece?
I love that. Yeah, and I love the way I've never really phrased it that way. So just in true disclosure here, I'll plagiarize that because, well, I guess I'm telling you, so it's not plagiarism, but I love that demystification because that's really what we try to do is say, well, wait a minute, it's not that creature on the top of the mountain, it's not Yoda, it's not whatever we tend to visualize as wisdom. It's actually you and me. And it's people all around. I can look out in my company right now and there's wisdom everywhere. And the way that we like to describe it is there's wisdom in almost every swim lane. I love, unfortunately, athletic analogies on everything. But if you picture this swim lane where we swim in a lane, I believe that almost everybody has both knowledge and experience in some swim lane. Some have multiple, but at least one. And if you buy into that, and I think we can prove it now after 4 years, if you buy into that, then the only issue is how do we, in a systematic, simple way, get the right wisdom in the right room, solving the right stuck topic. And when those 3 things collide, we actually trademarked the term rapid cycle learning because this changed the way, as a leader, I thought about learning forever. That this is how we're supposed to learn, is from another wise person in a highly facilitated, simple format. And so that's how we demystify it. It's everywhere, Joseph.
You know, thus I want to make sure that I share that as whatever I can. I don't know if I froze myself in that process or not. So if I am frozen, oops, there I am. I should be back in the stream now. Let's go here. Can you see me, Craig? All right. If not, if you can wing it for me for 1 second, I'm going to re-enter the broadcast and we'll be right back in.
Okay. Joseph's giving me a lot of power here. I feel like I could just take over the show while he's out, like a kid in a candy store. So while he's coming back in, I'll actually continue that theme since you asked the question about the wisdom and my definition of knowledge and experience. One of the things that's very exciting about the work that we get to do now is as we find wise people that are willing to help us, whether it's advisory boards or in our coaching platform, I talk about in the book that the spirit of reciprocity is very much alive and well. And if you're not familiar with that, it really does mean that if you ask people, in our case with wisdom, to help and participate and teach, solve problems, if you ask them in the right way, then they're more than happy to do it, and realize also that they get as much out of that exchange in that environment. And so this idea of reciprocity, I promise you, is absolutely alive and well. And to me, that's a very encouraging thing. Sort of especially in this time of the pandemic and uncharted waters that we're all in, there's really no better time, I think, than to reach out of our little bubbles. And most of us are in homes or small offices now because we can't be in big environments. No more important time to reach out and seek out that external wisdom on very specific topics, and it's quite amazing how fast we move from there. So I'm not sure if we have Joseph back or not. But if we're still live, I'll keep going. And actually, my team will get a big kick out of this because they would accuse me of standing in my studio here in Atlanta and doing this without anybody listening. So, and I'm actually doing that potentially today. But I'll keep going because I know one of the things that Joseph and I had talked about was when we think about this wisdom-based learning methodology, how do you do that? What are the steps to sort of do that? And one of the things I would point out, as Joseph was kind enough to do, to put our book up, it's a very simple book, and I've really outlined our whole methodology there. I want to be completely transparent because I think anybody can activate this wisdom-based learning with or without GXG, and that's really what I care about is leaders getting unstuck. But I talk about it in there because what I think is important is, number one, is the idea around humility. And so spend quite a bit of time defining humility, and there's lots of ways to define it, kind of like wisdom, but the way that I really appreciate the most is really the idea that I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to recognize that I don't know something. I don't have the knowledge and experience over here, so I'm actually going to ask for help. So number one is humility. And the second thing that we try to help folks with is what I would call defining the destination. There's a lot of talk about strategy and how to do strategy and what does that mean. And I'm pretty biased here because I call it a destination because I don't like to oversell the whole strategy topic. I think there are so many great pathways that people can take to get to certain destinations. And that tends to be where we spend our time, is debating those. And what I'd rather spend time on is the clarity around the destination, first of all. And then what is the likelihood that we're going to get there? And what I mean by that is, again, going back to our wisdom-based learning, we actually build, if you picture an ecosystem, like just any type of ecosystem, in the middle of the ecosystem for us is the destination. And around it, if you picture those bubbles around the destination.
I have to jump in just long enough to say you are my favorite person. I get bumped out of the live stream. I have to completely shut down my computer. I had to run my Ethernet cable.
Oh no. I think we lost you. We lost Joseph. He is clearly having some
From another
technology.
show. Thank
Oh, there you
very
are. You're
much for
back.
that.
Well, you're back. We lost you for a minute. There you go.
Yeah.
You're back. Okay.
So I was simply saying you saved the team. Talk about wisdom in action, people. He just saved us. Yeah, you could keep going about destination. I love your point. As I read it in terms of what is, we need to figure out that destination because it's not a viability of, an iteration of the now.
That's right. And so I was actually asking myself my own questions, which is kind of funny, Joseph. My team will
I'll go back and watch this.
My team will get a big
It'll be
kick out of
better
this.
than me.
Now, they accused me of being in my studio here in Atlanta and doing this without anybody else on. So I actually did that today.
Well, yeah.
But anyway,
it was pure professionalism. I want to compliment you on that. I prep guests all the time, but I never say in case I completely, evaporate into non-existence.
That's so funny.
It's true professionalism. I'll give it back to you. Let's get to destination.
And what I was doing was just telling them the steps. We follow a simple methodology. So what is wisdom-based learning? How does it work? Number one is humility. So I talked a little bit about humility and why that's super important. And the second thing that we help people with is define the destination. And what I was going through is the context of destination is just put it in the middle. Let's not rehash strategy a million times. There's a number of pathways that will work, but I want to know the real destination. And then we do it as an ecosystem. So if you picture in the middle of the ecosystem is the destination, the bubbles around, and everybody knows what an ecosystem looks like. What we do there is actually right in those bubbles. What are the buckets of wisdom? What is the knowledge and experience that are the imperatives that have to exist at a very high level to get to the destination?
And you give tools. I think the thing that, I don't endorse somebody unless I've read their work. I mean, it's just kind of my thing. I think if you're going to take all that time to write it and you're a thought leader, people shouldn't bring you on unless they've taken the time. So what I loved about, Unstuck is that there are actually tools to map out your own bubbles, right? All of the ecosystem wisdom pods, if you will.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I just encourage, and we do it on whiteboards. By the way, this is probably the least high-tech business model ever. All the work we do, I don't like PowerPoint. We use whiteboards and flip charts and very much old school because the point of this is the wisdom. But what we put on the whiteboard are these bubbles of what wisdom is the imperatives you have to have. And as we go around that, then we actually do a fun scoring exercise. And I would encourage all of your viewers and listeners to do this, is just score yourself. So if my destination is to be blah, 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 great digital company, whatever that means for you, if one of the buckets is, let's say, data analytics, right? Everybody has that in digital, right? Well, what is the likelihood based on your current wisdom, you and your organization, what's the probability that you're going to get to the destination based on your current wisdom? And it's so much fun, Joseph, because we actually do this pretty quickly in group sessions with senior leaders, and they start scoring, and there's usually 4 or 5 of them. They get more complex, then we add them up. And I've been doing this for 4 years nonstop. And the average score is less than 60% probability. When you add it all up, less than 60% chance you're going to get to the destination.
Wow.
If you think about that for a second, it's a simple exercise, but it's incredibly important. And it gets left out of all of this discussion on strategy. And so if you buy into that, and what's funny was when we do this, and usually these are pretty senior people in companies, any size company, but when they see the score, then people immediately want to change the scores. It's like, oh, well, now I know what you're doing. So we were actually 80%, not 50. I'm like, I can't change the score. The score is the score. The better question is, now that we're less than 60%, who's going down the hallway to tell the CEO or the owner that this big, important destination will only have a 60% chance of getting there? Right?
That's the junior member of the team that's going to go.
Yeah, let's pick who gets to go do that. So once we identify quickly, if you buy into this exercise, which usually gets people's attention, then the only question should be, well, how do we go fill the gaps? And that's sort of where we come in, or again, people can do it themselves. And so we just build a methodology of how you get very granular about what actually is the wisdom that's missing, knowledge and experience, and be as granular and specific as you can. And then we actually share in there how we go find wise people, right? I know your background in customer experience. I've read your stuff. I've listened to your stuff. I can promise you, if somebody is stuck on customer experiences and parts of customer experience, if I put you in that seat physically around a table in a facilitated format to help them, if they're stuck on this, their probability of getting unstuck just went through the roof.
And then anything else except that, you should put people around a seat with me because I'm stuck on everything else.
But
All right, so I feel like I'm like I came in during the third act of my own play. So you may have covered this. So
I'll let you know.
Be very gracious and act like, oh, well, that's a new idea. But I was going to read something from you a long time ago, and with my advanced age and declining memory, it's a wonder I remembered it all to do this. But here it is. It says, for most of human history on this planet, change has consistently been gradual. Only in the most recent 3 decades of civilization has change accelerated so rapidly that it poses a formidable challenge to the acquisition of timely knowledge.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, is that really the case? Haven't we always felt like knowledge was, coming at us faster than we can manage it? But
I think so. I think it's been the case, and I've had people that love to get nitty gritty and debate, this decade, that, and my point of this is my own story, basically, Joseph, to say that as a leader, I'm coming at it not as an academic or really even a thought leader, as a former operator leader. This is what it felt like to me. Okay. And particularly the last few years, and let's just take one topic, blockchain, right? Do you know how many CEOs sitting in CEO chairs that, like I did, don't really know whether it's a block or a chain? It gets a little bit of a laugh,
right?
But I've actually hosted meetings, our wisdom-based learning meetings, and that has been the case more times than not. Yeah. So what I would argue is it has accelerated, not the complexity. I think all of it's solvable, but the pace and the number of things that a leader has to have some knowledge and experience on to make decisions has accelerated. And again, I just say that from my own perspective. A lot of people have confirmed that. The meetings I have confirm it, but I'm not going to debate, the nuance of it.
But I think that the speed of failure seems to be accelerated for sure. Don't you think? I mean, absolutely. I love in your book, you go through all of these different industries that have failed. I mean, the classic examples of Kodak and others notwithstanding, but I loved the circus. Just about an hour south of me is a major epicenter for circus. So Sarasota, Florida.
Oh yeah,
is they've got a circus museum and the Ringling Brothers thing down there, and circus arts were big down there until Feld collapsed not too long ago. The circus went away. I love that you take on issues like, why did the circus fail? Because I think it does cause us all to see that stuck thinking and not being able to leverage knowledge and experience to face the challenges of the now and the future and of getting to that destination. That's right. Really why they fail, right? In the end,
I think it is, and that was some of the case studies we pulled out. And then back to, you asked me this at the very beginning. It goes back to my story when I got stuck on stuff. When I really went back and analyzed what was happening there, it was usually 2 things. One, I was trying to do new stuff. That's technical term for adjacencies or whatever, right? But I was trying to do new stuff, and I simply and my team didn't have the knowledge and experience in the new stuff, right? And so that's the wisdom gap. And why humility is so important is, I would argue, and I think you're saying the same thing, that most people are stuck because we're not willing to admit that, and I've got 2 examples here. If I'm making iPhones and then I want to make a cup of cold brew, which I happen to have here, guess what? This takes different knowledge and experience than this. And you know what? As leaders, we tend to not think so, and we get stuck. And here's what I found is, even a little step outside of your core business, it doesn't even have to be a big leap. You know what happens to knowledge and experience? It is not incremental. I would argue it is an exponential plunge often. So if you think about that, and this is me, this is my story, you're sitting around the room, and for us, it was digital automation, all this cool stuff that we were doing. And me and my senior team had almost no knowledge and wisdom on any of that. And guess who's making decisions? Who's investing in stuff? Who's buying companies and spending money, right? This group of people.
Yeah.
who they've entrusted in us to do it. And it wasn't until I bumped into this idea and we brought 4 people into a very small, just advisory board setting, 3 meetings over 6 months. And we changed the trajectory of our digital work and presence forever in the company over about a 6-month period. And this is a 100-year-old insurance company, not the most nimble ship, I might add, right? And
well, it's interesting because as you say that, I just had this moment of thinking your CFO probably sent you forward and said, if you're going to be able to justify the expense for the cold brew, you're going to have to use it in a demonstrable way as part of your thought leadership. So there you did it. You're now completely above audit on the expenses.
I love it.
All right, let's go with this. This is the book, people. It's called Unstuck. Well, I can take your banner off there so we don't get your name in the way. The book is Unstuck, and this enables people to come to your website as we posted it up there just a second ago. Yep. I'll post it up again. They come to the website. They can learn more about the book. They can buy the book on Amazon or any location. Sure. I bought it extremely inexpensively as a digital download on Amazon this past week, and it's a very accessible read. Let's start with that. So after they read the book, though, that's when they probably, I mean, there's plenty of questions. You ask lots and lots of questions and refer back to the reader, and you give plenty of tools, but there's still the opportunity then at that point to look at some coaching opportunities through CraigLemasters.com, or to become just part of a community to stay in and informed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage people, our corporate site, gxg.co, and there, Joseph, I mean, we've got lots of case studies, and again, super transparent. We want to put the whole business model out there, let people see it. Looking particularly at some of the case studies, really what we've heard back is it generates a lot of stuck ideas with people. Like, if I didn't think I was stuck, now I'm reading these, and have you ever had M&A gone bad? We've done a lot of work around that. Yeah, most of us have. We don't like to admit it because it's a hard topic, but gxg.co is a great way to participate with us. We obviously do newsletters and stuff you can sign up for, and then and social as well, particularly LinkedIn. We like to post a lot of stuff that we're working on, and hopefully some things that you'll find interesting. So lots of ways.
Oh no, I got the wrong letter. Hold on.
Yeah. That's okay.
I told you that math stuff was hard for me.
I'm sorry. I should have given you a sign.
That's okay. I didn't type it quickly enough. So hold on. Everyone will see now the correct version.
It's live TV.
One of the great things about live stream is how much. Oh gosh, I changed it to a G. Hold on. Hold on, everyone.
Whoever's company that is going to get some amazing. They're going to get some amazing traffic.
This and make sure that we agree that it says the same thing.
Hey, there we are.
gxg.co. I think people will remember this now because of my faux pas.
I love it.
Like, if there's any doubt before, it's the X, right?
I love it. That's it.
Okay, so and it does feel a lot like live stream. The beauty of it is the vulnerability, the humility of it all.
I love it.
I remember a time when everything we did, we tried to make it look perfect, right? It was flawless. It was 70 takes for a minute and a half of content.
Ridiculous.
Right?
Yeah.
And here we are, for 45 minutes, you winging it without me because I drop off with that incredible authenticity and vulnerability that you talk about in the book. Let's talk about authenticity. I think we talked a little bit about humility. Let's talk about accuracy. Let's talk about clarity. All of the concepts that you drill down in as elements of getting unstuck, right? Like accessing. You have to be humble to accept anybody else's input as knowledge.
Yeah, we really do.
And not think you know it all already. But beyond that, there's more to it, right?
I think so, Joseph. And the thing that I love to drill down on, and I've been talking about this for so long. And when I see companies do it, it's so powerful. But in crisis times is the best time to practice this. And I call it: do we really know the people we work with, or we just know about them? Now that may sound like a simple thing. I would argue it's one of the most systemic challenges most companies have, most leaders have. We end up knowing a lot about people, but we don't really know them. What do I mean by that? Do we really know their heart? Do we really know how they think? Do we know how they process information? That decision that we stand around and talk and complain about, do we really understand how they got there? Have we ever actually sat down and had that conversation? Have we invested time in that? And I would say, while this has always been important, I am almost preaching on this right now for our client base, because there's no better time for leaders to practice this than now. Because I believe what's driving the stress out there's a lot of factors to it, but we're piling on work for people right now. That's our response in a lot of ways to doing stuff on Zoom, because we can work, 24 hours a day if we want to. So we just pile stuff on. And yet we're not taking the time to really know those individuals. These are people behind these roles and these jobs. Do we really know their circumstance? Do we really know what they can handle right now? And as I see companies get very granular and specific on what somebody can actually do and accomplish, which is probably a lot, but it's probably not the pile on, that stress level in these organizations is just coming down dramatically. Now, that's a pretty authentic approach, and it's not easy because you got to spend time on it. And most leaders, we just don't want to do that. We're busy. We're going fast, but we've got.
In the old days, I used to get with CEOs, and we'd look at employee engagement scores, and talk about the importance of having employee engagement to have customer engagement. And then we would typically see somebody who's really knocking the cover off the ball in terms of their team's engagement versus somebody who wasn't. And we could just walk over to each of those two respective leaders and say to them, "Tell me, what is, how many kids do they have? What's their interest levels? What do they do when they're not working?" And you could almost do the person.
That's right.
Determine whether or not you had high employee engagement based on the amount of interest, authentic interest that people took on their team.
Absolutely. And if you take that to that next level, and again, the question I usually like to drill down to is, explain to me why that person made the decision. I mean, that's what we do all day. Leaders get paid, I believe, to make choices. That is the only thing we get paid to do. All the other stuff is peripheral. We get paid to make choices. So if I make a choice, I want to know why somebody made that choice. Do we actually take the time? Do we know them well enough to understand it? Because you know what? It probably is a pretty good choice. But because we don't really know them, and we don't know how they think and how they process information, which is probably different than us, then we just assume it was a bad choice. And it's usually not. And again, I can't think of a better, I think the opportunity right now for leaders to step up, get to know people, invest time, even if it has to be on Zoom, but we invest that level of time where I see our clients, the people in our network doing this, it is a home run in a very hard time. And then the other part of authenticity, in my view, I'm a fanatic on communication, is right now we better be taking what we think is the right amount of communication on all of this stuff and doubling it. That's my scientific methodology.
I agree. I mean, I think doubling it if what you're communicating is accurate, right? So that lines up with that next piece around accuracy, and I know you use Jeopardy analysis example of the laser accuracy of some of the Jeopardy champions. Yeah. If you have accurate information, you want to double that, right? Or at least double the candor around the things you don't necessarily know.
Absolutely, we do. And if you think that somebody needs, 5 ounces of communication, I promise you give them 10 ounces. And right now, especially, it is better. And part of that might be listening and asking better questions. Doesn't have to just be talking. But we see it day in and day out. And the encouraging thing to me, Joseph, is the companies, the leaders that are doing this right now, and really using this tough time as a chance to change some of their own behaviors are crushing it. They're actually moving forward. They're doing new things. Because the reality is, look at McKinsey's study a couple of weeks ago. This whole topic it came out in a survey. It said 79% of the leaders don't believe they have what it takes, skill sets, knowledge, experiences, we would call it, to grow outside of COVID. When we're done with the pandemic, they don't believe it. Now think about that for a second. Almost 80% of leaders saying, wow, I need help. I mean, you talk about a humility that I don't think has historically ever been there. Well, what a chance for leaders then to dive in and say, tell me about that. What exactly is missing? Think of that ecosystem. Just be candid now. And the companies I see doing this, organizations doing this now, are already starting to pop out of this thing and grow like they can't believe it. They're like, wow, this feels pretty good, even though it's a tough time and we're doing business very differently. But
that's the magnitude of skepticism about their ability to thrive on the post-COVID world, then all the more reason for them to figure out how to access the right experiences and the right knowledge base.
That's right.
And give them the wisdom to sustain their life. Right?
Absolutely. What better time to reach out and do that? And the cool thing, like I started with earlier, is it's all around us. It's not that hard when we're intentional about it, and you're very specific on what you're doing or what you're looking for. You ask in the right way. And then the spirit of reciprocity that I mentioned earlier is alive and well. And it generates so much excitement in organizations when all of a sudden, I'll go back to the CX example I used with you. If I'm struggling with that and I've got 2 or 3 Josephs sitting around me solving this stuck thing, you don't think that feels pretty good? And so what, and here's the sequence. I believe that the confidence that wisdom drives is what allows us to make choices faster. We all want the speed and the agile leaders and all this stuff, right? And I think the only reason we're not like that sometimes is we don't have the confidence. We don't have the confidence because we just lack wisdom in that topic, not everything. But you think about it, if you have wisdom, and I know you do in your swim lanes, the speed at which you can go move and execute and help clients execute is off the chart, right? So
this is so
replicate that.
So interesting to me too, because I remember reading a book about kind of groupthink. I can't even remember. That might have been the title years ago. And one of the things that they said is that wisdom doesn't always lie in the consultant, right? Wisdom can often be a function of all these seemingly ordinary folks around you who have an extraordinary sense of knowledge around something specific.
That's
and
right.
So I love this kind of cultivating the wise around you, as opposed to necessarily believing there is that person you need to hire at all times. No, I'm a consultant, and I said that. So what the heck?
Well, and you know what? And we're in the consulting space too. And I am not anti-consultant. I've been somewhat accused of that in some of the talks I give, and I'm really not. I think there's a great role for traditional academic-based, super smart thought leader consulting. I think it's super worthwhile. This is a little different because I think when we get stuck on some of the hardest topics as a leader, again, what helped me even more was to have a number of operators who had solved what I'm trying to solve pouring into me to help me solve it. Now, does that mean it wouldn't be helpful to have some of the data, the information, the knowledge from traditional consultants? Of course it is. I mean, there's tons of rich stuff there. But to get me to make that choice, which is my definition of leadership, faster, those people sitting around the table with me, whether that's metaphorically or real or on Zoom, doesn't matter, that helps me move really fast. And a simple example, Joe, so I mentioned M&A gone bad earlier. We do some of that work because we all experience that. We buy stuff and it doesn't work out. So we love that work. Why? Because we just get people, wise people that have done similar stuff that have worked their way out of it. And usually it's as simple as this. This is not, again, super complicated high-tech stuff. It's somebody in the meeting having the aha going, well, guess what, Mr. CFO? When I did that, I actually closed that plant, or I moved it here and did that. And everybody in the room goes, wow, we've been thinking about doing that for 2 years.
Yeah. We
just didn't know if that was right. And I'm like, well, here's how it worked for me. Here's why that worked. And guess what happens? Confidence just starts like a roller coaster going up, and we make the choice. And guess what? It's a quick decision, but it's a better decision. And all of a sudden the M&A starts to get better. This company we bought starts to improve. I mean, why wouldn't we do that? It's
interesting. I was interviewing somebody for the new book that I've got coming out called Stronger Through Adversity. And they talked about a reference to the elephant speaks last, this notion that sometimes as a CEO, you need to talk last. Because if you don't, you shortcut. I mean, you are the wisdom, you are the knowledge. And if you wait to let it come from other people and actually pull the people around the room and then speak, you frequently get these pockets of tacit knowledge.
Bingo. Yeah, I love that. I'm glad that one of your interviews said that, because that was me. I realized my own humility journey, hopefully, was the day I realized I'd gotten really, really good at convincing my team and then the company to do exactly what I thought was the best path. And there's an element where I think that's a good trait for leaders to have, except when it's not the right path, which we don't know unless we call it pressure testing. Why wouldn't I want to pressure test that path with just a few people that have gone before me? Again, I don't want to over glamorize this. Why wouldn't I want to do that? It doesn't take long, right? Wisdom transfer, if you go back to the history of education, which is really what we modeled this after, this is how we were supposed to learn. If you look at the very beginning of education, it was a wise person teaching a less wise person in either a one-on-one format or a small group. And it didn't take long. Why? Because they're pouring into them. Do this, don't do that. Not complicated.
So and drawing out of them. I mean, that right? The pull from. There's both. There's a fill in and there's a pull out of. And I think the pulling out of is a lot of the built up wisdom that we have to uncover in ourselves. I mean,
that's right.
Yes, we need to take wisdom from others. We need to help them. We need to help pull it out of them to pour it into ourselves. This is an interesting.
I couldn't agree more.
All right, I want to do some wrap up. So I'm throwing all these website addresses up. People are thinking like, Joseph, just make up your mind, for God's sake. All right, there's Craig Lemasters. Now that's a little more geared toward the not Uber corporate side, right? I mean,
so this is my speaker website. So if anybody wants, it's what I use for speaking engagements. There's a lot of our coaching platform is on there, and then gxg.co is really our corporate website. And there we do mostly our advisory board work. So either place, very similar stuff, but that's the difference.
Okay. So, and remember, there's an X in there, people. Don't be silly putting another letter in there. I wouldn't be caught doing anything like that. All right. So with that, then let me kind of also make sure that we encourage people that when they do go to the speaker website, they will see that there's an opportunity to not only pull you in as a speaker, you're doing virtual presentations. You got a cool digs there in Atlanta. You almost did a virtual keynote today, just by virtue of the host disappearing for a moment.
I love it.
And then there's the books, and there's the coaching, and the books include this one, which is just awesomely amazing. And I can speak to that because not only did I get it on my Kindle, but I'm not even on screen. What am I doing here? I did it on my Kindle, but I also started printing out sections of this book so that I could look at it. So I've got a photocopy of a Kindle page. How pathetic is that from a technology perspective? All right, so last few minutes, I want to just do some kind of let's get to know you a little bit more now that we've picked your brain and tried to cull your knowledge.
Yeah.
All right, here you go. Oops.
Oh, wow.
Who is that?
You found that. That is Riggs. That's one of our two golden retrievers.
All right, let's go back to the shot and get rid of Riggs. Hi, Riggs. Nice to meet you. All right, so here's a couple of questions for you. Least knowledgeable person you've ever met.
The least knowledgeable person I have met. By that's a super
terrible question.
That's. And I think you're great at this, Joseph, but that's one of the most awful questions I've ever been asked. I mean,
I was hoping you'd say that.
I would even say it's kind of
trying to throw you this weird curveball that says everybody has something to offer. We are in a world of trying to pull knowledge from people. Right?
There's no stupid question. I'm gonna, as we say,
I will own it. I will own it.
I'm taking.
If that's the worst I get from leaving you alone for 20 minutes, I'll consider it a huge
fit on that.
All right, let me ask you a little bit more serious questions. What do you wish you knew at the beginning of your CEO tenure that you know now?
Yeah, the flip side of that is one of the wisest things that I was taught that I wish I knew very early on, which is if you look at exit interviews and different things CEOs finish, is what's the hardest thing you do, and that's to let people move on. We call it firing them or whatever you want to call it. And what I heard later in life was asking yourself a question every day when you go in: is there somebody in your organization that you wish would resign today and that you'd be super happy about? And that's a simple question, but it helped me rethink that whole topic of do I or don't I? Is it the right fit? And when I started using that, again, pretty late in my CEO tenure, it made it so much easier, Joseph, because it wasn't that they're bad people, it wasn't that they weren't trying hard, but I realized if they did that, they actually resigned, I'd be doing a little bit of the happy dance, and then it's time to make the change. So I would encourage people to ask themselves that frequently.
Have you ever met anybody who's not been stuck?
Um, I have to answer this. I have one, and I've had, I don't know how many, hundreds, maybe 1,000 of these conversations the last 4 years. And I had one CEO, I won't name the person. The industry is in the rental car space, that told me they were not stuck, never been stuck, won't be stuck. And they had all the knowledge and experience internally. And I think you would agree that this was 3 years ago, that space has struggled a little bit.
Well, so now I will redeem myself. I want to point out something.
Oh,
That
no.
would have been your answer for the least knowledgeable person you know.
You know what? It could have been, and that's where I was going.
All right.
I don't.
Thank you for saving me, but you could at least give me credit for there are some people who lack so much insight that may be the only way in which you would be not knowledgeable. All right, I'm going to leave it with that. I just still don't think I redeemed myself, but with a shot. All right, because he has been such an amazing guest who's actually had to be a co-host and a variety of other functions. Monitor of bad questions. He's had a lot to do today. I strongly encourage you to go to the corporate side at xg.co, just co, no M on that one, and or visit his more personal, he has more speaking website, if you will. It's now scrolling beneath, so we can look on the screen at the same time. And then with that, I will simply say thank you to you. I will, again, out of gratitude for all that you did today to make this possible when we were having our share of technical challenges. I will strongly encourage people to not only go to those websites, but if you were to share this particular presentation with someone via any of our platforms, I will make a point of donating a book to you. So if you just reshare this on LinkedIn, for example, let me pull up a book I'll use. I'll send that one. Leading the Starbucks Way will come to you. If we find that you've done that, or let us know that you've posted this particular live stream, either reposted on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on YouTube or whatever channel, just let us know and we'll make sure we get a copy of that book to you. And with that, I just say to you again, many, many thanks, Craig, for all that you did on the show today and for what you're doing, more importantly, to get people unstuck around the globe. Next week, we have some amazing guests coming in the next few weeks. Howard Behar, one of the H's of the H2O formula that is the foundation of Starbucks. Howard Schultz, Howard Behar, and Orrin Smith, they were the creators. Howard will be joining me on the show next week. Week after that, Mark Sanborn, a true friend of mine. I've known him since I really started in this field. And Mark Sanborn wrote one of my favorite books of all time called The Fred Factor, about his postman, Fred, and the extraordinary extra effort that Fred went through and how we all can be a Fred. Carl Mecklenburg, who is a Ring of Famer for the Denver Broncos, also a leadership coach, worked with Carl on writing an incredible leadership book about teenagers. And so we'll have him on to talk about leadership, and maybe you can explain to me why my Broncos are tanking. With that, I thank you all very, very much and say goodbye to you. Until next week, thank you, Craig.